Joining us now, the #2 ranked Democrat in the Senate Minority Whip, Dick Durbin of Illinois. Good to have you on the set here.
It's good to be here.
Must be visiting the grandkids.
Exactly right.
So, what did you make of the interview with? I know you were listening in the
Powerful.
green room. What stood out to you?
Well, I listened carefully because you asked some of the questions that many of us have wanted answered for a while. I wanted to get into this Wall Street Journal investigation, which has been used to discredit McCabe. I'll have to say I'm still struggling with the fact that after 2 decades in working in the FBI, really taking a close look at questions and answers and making life and death decisions, that his explanation doesn't really satisfy me as to why he faltered in this moment when he was being asked about his own conduct.
Mm-hmm. And what do you make of the investigation? Lindsey Graham wants to now launch an investigation.
Well, it's interesting. I'm one who believes the Senate Judiciary Committee has been on the sidelines throughout this whole controversy. If you look at the history of the committee, this used to be the premier committee that led the investigations on the most controversial issues of the day.
Right.
And for the last several years, we've been AWOL. And I've been making that point in the committee, and I thought with Lindsey coming in, he was an exception in the last 2 years in his crime subcommittee. He called some pretty important hearings. And now he has an opportunity, if he wishes, to open the door of the Senate Judiciary Committee playing a more active role. I wonder if he really wants to open that door.
Well, unfortunately, Lindsey, who we've both known for a very long time, he's got one of the most important positions in the United States Senate as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. And he's the tip of the spear for Donald Trump declaring an unconstitutional emergency.
And that's a problem, Joe, because when he opens the door with Andrew McCabe, there are obvious questions Senator Feinstein and others will raise about other witnesses. We're not going to stop here, are we? Let's get the full story in front of us. And does that mean that we're going to call before us the Gang of Eight? Anyone who participated in that counterintelligence briefing that occurred, which...
Was that a shock to you that Andrew McCabe notified Mitch McConnell, Devin Nunes, Chairman Burr, and who's the fourth? Paul Ryan. How quickly we forget. And Paul Ryan, and let them know that the President of the United States was under investigation for possibly nefarious ties to Russia, and not one of them raised an objection.
Well, let me put it in context. I haven't been a member of the Gang of Eight, but I've been in some briefings with my capacity on the Appropriations Committee. And it is rare, if ever, that you have that kind of confrontation. You say, that's none of your business. You're overstepping. You're into something that you're not legally entitled to do. Rare. You try to absorb the information thinking this is just a thin slice of the reality. I want to listen to it, try to absorb it, and put it in context with my staff.
But wouldn't you pick up the phone and call him afterwards?
I'd be surprised if some member of the president's party didn't reach out to someone in the administration to let them know what happened at that hearing.
What do you make, though, Senator, the question at the center of what Lindsey Graham wants investigated, and that is this discussion of the 25th Amendment, which is about as serious as it gets. It's impeachment by a different name. It's impeachment without a vote for you all, a vote in the House. Do you think that's appropriate, that the duly elected president would be removed under the 25th Amendment, which points to incapacitation?
Willie, you put your finger on it. I listened as you were going through that, and when you brought that up, I thought, well, that really is the starting point. Is this a question of incapacity, of a disability? No. From what I heard from Mr. McCabe, it was a question of whether the president had been compromised by his relationship with the Russians.
Right.
And then you look at the actual 25th Amendment and you say, really, Mike Pence is going to start this process, and he's going to get a majority of the Trump cabinet to sign on? That is the starting point.
Well, right.
And so I don't know how serious that was. It didn't seem to fit into incapacity and disability, and it also seemed like a reach way beyond political
But it's an interesting conversation to have as you look into whether or not he's compromised. And a lot of people would look at the facts right now and wonder if he's compromised.
I think that is a legitimate line of inquiry, but I don't think it fits into McCabe's playbook. I think he was working on this counterintelligence angle and whether there was an obstruction of justice involving the FBI.
Caddy, to put it in perspective, though, it was brought up, and they passed by it very quickly.
Yeah.
Nobody acted on it. I mean, the only real news out of it was that Rod Rosenstein offered to wear a wire.
Yeah, and even that I felt that McCabe was playing down slightly, because he seemed to be saying, well, he suggested that in the context of lots of other things as well. The wire side of it, he seemed to be, although he said he definitely wasn't joking, but I was fascinated by just the degree of chaos and emotional tension in the room,
Yes.
with
Right.
McCabe saying he could barely even follow the conversation. It was going in so many directions, and Rosenstein was walking backwards and forwards, and just how shocked all of
The
them
top
were.
of our intelligence community
Was
appears to
clearly
be
have been totally stunned by that.
shaken.
Senator,
Yeah.
one of the things that McCabe said at the end of that was that he hopes that the person who's going to get to the bottom of this is Mueller, right? Of whether the president ever was an asset, has been an asset, is still an asset, and that he hopes that that report will be widely distributed. How confident are you, after the confirmation of the new Attorney General, that it is good, that we will see that report?
You really put your finger on the whole Bill Barr nomination and why I voted against it. And I respect him as an attorney and a man who was a former Attorney General. And I said to him at the hearing, my first question is, why do you want this job? Why are you walking into this Department of Justice at this moment in history with this president? And I really believe, having listened to him at the hearing and then talked to him in my office afterwards, that he has an institutional obligation, an institutional responsibility. He feels it. The things that worry me, two things. First, this voluntary 19-page memo to the Trump defense team, saying that under the unitary presidential theory, the president should be spared from investigations on certain activity and crimes. And secondly, the whole question about whether he's going to disclose this to the American people. The transparency of this report. I think wide transparency and release of it is critical for this nation to start to come to grips with what we faced for 2 years.
Do you think we'll get it?
Well, I think he's going to limit some of it, obviously, to try to protect sources and methods. But I do believe the more that is released, the better for this nation.
All right. We still need to talk about Michael Flynn and Saudi Arabia, just that small issue. So more with the senator when we come.
Small issue. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.